Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hassan, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth. Back once again with my boy AJ Ponciano. AJ, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself now?
I'm doing great. Do you have any? I mean, obviously, we're not recording this on Black Friday, but do you have any Black Friday shopping plans?
I'm gonna stay in the comfort of my bed. I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock. But a new Fitbit watch would be kind of cool. Mine kind of like stopped tracking my sleep, and that's one of the main uses I have for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know you don't have an iPhone, but I use an Apple Watch. I used to use a Fitbit my whole life, but I use an Apple Watch, and really the only two things I care about. I'm big into steps. Like, I like knowing how many steps I have. I don't know why. Like, I'm super like OCD about it in a way. Like, I want to like try to hit. I always try to hit 10,000 steps because that's when I had a Fitbit when I was younger. Like, that was what I had to hit. But I'm always checking my steps, and then as you mentioned, sleep as well. Those are really the only two uses for it. But it's funny with the addition of the Apple Watch. It feels like Fitbit's just kind of, I wouldn't say fell off a cliff, but I remember like I thought I was cool, like in third grade, like to
Yeah,
get a Fitbit for Christmas. I
you had
was
one
like,
for
like
third grade.
this is awesome, yeah. But hey, you're still using it at your age, and I would be using it too. But it is what it is. So maybe you'll find a nice Fitbit. Maybe you'll find, I don't know. There's a bunch of different types of watches, but obviously, as you guys can tell, we are doing our Black Friday special. We have a weird game. We have a game on Black Friday. Hard to believe. The Raiders and the Chiefs. I mean, great. I mean, you got your shopping taken care of. Weird part is that 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, like 12 p.m. California time. It's just weird timing, honestly. Like I would expect it to maybe be like a nightcap type thing. I know people got to work maybe or whatever, but regardless, we got football, and I like how the football is kind of integrating every year. It feels like we'll get. I mean, I don't know if it's from COVID or if it's just because of like where the holidays are scheduled, but we'll have a Black Friday game on Friday. We'll probably have a game on a Wednesday in the next year or two. Like it just seems like every day of the week we're going to be able to hit a football game, which is great. But anyways, guys, today instead of combining the Black Friday start, sit, sleeper, and bust and the Thanksgiving, we figured that we create its own show. Meant to be a quick show. We understand you got shopping to do. So if you're listening to this on your drive to your local Kohl's, JC Penney, Target, we appreciate it. We're just going to give you one start, sit, sleeper, and bust, with it being one matchup. And then obviously a game prediction at the end. So without further ado, go ahead and give me your one start in this matchup.
Yeah, I really like DeAndre Hopkins in this game. The Raiders haven't given up too many passing yards, 2,465 up to this point, but 20 passing touchdowns given up to only 5 interceptions. Not a great ratio. I get it. Patrick Mahomes has been great against this division his entire career. He's been great against the Raiders throughout his career. There's only one bad game I can think of against the Raiders, since he had like two or three interceptions. He had a pick six one of the games. I think it was Thanksgiving last year, or it was a December game last year. I just remember the pick six very vividly in that game, and that was really the only bad game I've ever seen. But Hopkins has been one of the main targets for this Chiefs team since he came over against the Panthers last week. He wasn't the leading receiver. Noah Gray had a couple of big ones, but only 5 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. So the targets and the catches were there at five, but only 35 yards. But he did make it up with the touchdown. And it seems like when they get to the end zone, it goes DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelsey, and then whoever else is on that roster in the receiving position. But it seems right now Hopkins has been that number one option once they get down to the red zone.
Yeah, so for me, this is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to go ahead with whoever the Raiders quarterback is, because obviously Gardner Minshew is out for the year. He broke his collarbone last week, and Desmond Ritter they actually traded for mid-season, I think 3 or 4 weeks back, and they have Aiden O'Connell who's been on IR with a thumb injury, and I've seen reports that he might be able to come back. Really don't know, but I don't really think the Raiders are too like desperate to figure out who their quarterback is because they're sitting with I think a 2-9 record. They're obviously competing for number one overall pick at this point, either getting their franchise quarterback or getting a guy like Travis Hunter or somebody like that. Regardless, I don't think winning is necessarily on their mind. I think Desmond Ritter would be the appropriate pick here, just for a couple of reasons. One, I've never been a big Aiden O'Connell fan; just hasn't really shown me too much. I feel like he's kind of a game manager, which is fine when you're on a team like the 49ers, but not the Raiders. Desmond Ritter has shown some promise. I mean, last week when he came in for I was just like Gardner Minshew, 5 for 10, 64 yards. All right, whatever. One carry, 3 yards. Obviously, a former third round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Back with Atlanta, they obviously expected him to be bigger than he was. But all in all, whoever the Raiders quarterback is, I think the Raiders need a jolt. They're going to be on the road. I think this quarterback, whether it's Ritter or Aiden O'Connell, has the opportunity to provide some tremendous depth, tremendous support, and overall, maybe help the Raiders compete or at least make this matchup a little bit closer than people are expecting. All right, what about your sit?
I'm gonna go with Kareem Hunt. We saw it last week, only 16 carries, 68 yards in this game. Did have a few catches, 3 for 19 there, but one of the big things is Isaiah Pacheco should be back in this game. All signs look like that he will be, and I don't think Pacheco is going to come back and be that lead running back right away, have the most carries. But I wouldn't be surprised if he takes away a decent amount of carries from Kareem Hunt. Hunt, I mean, we've seen him have games over 20 carries. Since Pacheco's injury and since I picked him up. But the last couple of weeks he's been under that 20 carry mark. He's been right around that 15, 16, 17 mark. I wouldn't be surprised if Pacheco comes this game, has like 8, 9 carries, maybe a reception, and it just eats into Kareem Hunt's production here. They aren't going to force him back too much, especially if this game does get out of hand early. Kareem Hunt may get a couple more carries there. But this is more of just a Isaiah Pacheco coming back, and they're going to want to get him touches than Kareem Hunt being bad or the Raiders defense being good.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with Trey Tucker. Now, Trey Tucker, I bought the hype in week 4, I believe it was, when I needed a wide receiver in my dynasty league. Had 22.6 in week 3, 15.4, then kind of fell off the cliff. And I was expecting more production from him just because of the Devontae Adams trade, and it just wasn't really clicking. Last week had his best week against Denver in some time, 7 catches for 82 yards to 15.2 fantasy points. Can't think of the other Raiders receiver. You guys can tell how prepared I am for the show. I was literally looking at his stats before the game. Actually outperformed him in that game, which was, I guess, good for Trey Tucker in the fact that, okay, he wasn't necessarily a guy that had gotten 3 points or had no production whatsoever. He was still able to have good amount of success in this week against Denver, who's obviously been improving. The other receiver, Jacoby Myers, that's what I was trying to think of. 10 catches, 121 yards. What concerns me more is the fact that Brock Bowers had 4 catches for 38 yards, and I know Brock Bowers' production is going to go up, especially in this matchup. Tight ends have always had success against Kansas City. I think that's going to continue. So with Trey Tucker kind of having a once in a blue moon game, it happens all the time with guys who haven't had great seasons, kind of get that 2 or 3 really good weeks, and then the rest are just I think this could be an opportunity for that to happen again. I think Brock Bowers' production is going to go up alongside Jacoby Myers and a new quarterback. There's so many factors that it's just way too risky to start a guy like Trey Tucker, even after coming off the week that he had last week, which, to be fair, wasn't even great if it was consistent. So 15.2, I'm not buying the hype. I'm sitting Trey Tucker for at least one more week, and maybe would consider starting him the next week in week 14 against Tampa Bay. What about your sleeper?
Yeah, mine's gonna be Jacoby Myers. As you mentioned, him having 10 receptions, 121 yards. He also did that on 15 targets, which is one of the big things here. I don't think Jacoby Myers will have the same type of game, but I think he'll have a solid game. My opinion, also Trey Tucker's production will go down this next game. Bowers will go back up, but Jacoby Myers right now is averaging the most yards per game that he has his entire career at 64.3 yards per game. He's also averaging about 5-6 receptions per game. So they're targeting him a good amount. And a game that I'm expecting him to be behind a good amount, they're going to have to throw it. I don't know who's going to be at quarterback. That will be Ritter. O'Connell was a full participant, I believe, today at practice. He potentially could start the game or come in later, depending on how they play. But whoever's there, I mean, Jacoby Myers has had the production. I mean, he's averaged it out to basically 6 receptions or 5 receptions at 65 yards. I mean, that's 11 fantasy points, 11.5 fantasy points that he's given you essentially every week in a PPR league. I mean, he's someone they could throw in that flex position in a game that he could go off. I mean, we saw 10 receptions, 121 yards. That's 22.1 fantasy points right there. I mean, he's obviously going to have his down games, but that was also against a divisional opponent. A divisional opponent probably lined it up a good amount against Pat Surtain. Now, he was a fool against Pat Surtain because I know he went in and was guarding Brock Bowers throughout this game, but I mean, the pass defense for the Chiefs has been solid. They've only given up 938, or no, sorry, that was rushing yards. Passing yards, they haven't been the greatest. The rushing has been probably it's been their strong suit of their defense. Passing wise, they're right around middle of the pack. They've given up 15 touchdowns to there, 6 interceptions, almost 2,500 total yards through the air. I expect the number to go way up, mainly just because the amount that the Raiders are going to have to throw.
Let's have some fun with this one. I'm going to go Noah Gray at my sleeper. Look, Noah Gray the last 2 weeks, 4 catches each, 2 touchdowns each, 18.3 and 22.6. Am I saying that Noah Gray is going to be an elite fantasy option? Most likely not. But Travis Kelce has definitely had an up and down season, to say the least. And Noah Gray has gotten his first touchdowns of the season the last 2 weeks. And I think he's riding some momentum there. There obviously was some question marks about, I guess I wouldn't say Kelsey's age, but Kelsey's production going into this year. Obviously, Rashee Rice going down. They bring in DeAndre Hopkins, just kind of a revolving door. But Gray's thrived with DeAndre Hopkins, in the mix here. So there's a lot of things going in Gray's direction. He's rostered in 1.1% of leagues. I mean, this is more of like a 16, 18 team league because he got a Hall of Fame tight end and Travis Kelsey ahead of him. But Patrick Mahomes has shown a tendency to throw to tight ends, particularly Noah Gray as of late in the red zone area. So that could definitely happen again, especially if guys like Kelsey, especially if guys like Hopkins, especially if guys like Worthy out of the wide receiver core are assuming the attention in the red zone, maybe dink and doink touchdown, Noah Gray a couple times in a game or another time, or even add some more receiving yards to go along with receptions. I mean, when you look at his stats overall for a backup tight end, I don't think he's necessarily had a bad year by all standards. He's averaging 7.5 fantasy points, which some tight end ones have had average throughout the season. So again, kind of a long shot, but let's have some fun. Go Noah Gray as my sleeper. All right, what about your bus?
Yeah, it's going to be Trey Tucker. Last time they faced off against each other, he only had 2 receptions for 26 yards. He did have a rush attempt in that game for 7 yards, but just didn't have any production. And it's not like he's seen an uptick in production from then. His next good game was just last week, the 7 receptions for 82 yards. And Brock Bowers, like you said, didn't have the best game. I expect him to bounce back, and he's been that number one tight end in fantasy in the NFL so far this year. Yeah, I just don't expect Trey Tucker to come in and have good chemistry with any of these quarterbacks. Maybe a little bit better with Aiden O'Connell because Trey Tucker and O'Connell probably had a pretty good connection just last year with both of them getting those second team reps and then a little bit of playing time together. But if Ritter's in there, I mean, Ritter has no familiarity with anyone, so that may hurt Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers just a little bit because he's just going to throw to whoever's open. Uh, but one of the big things is he's going to have to come to learn that Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers is your number one, number two looks in this offense, and that just smooths Trey Tucker down. In any game, like I said, there's going to be a lot of pass attempts from that Raiders offense. It may be O'Connell for part of the game, maybe Ritter for part of the game. Either way, when it was Minshew who has been pretty consistent, he only targeted him 3 times in that game against Kansas City, which is tied for the second fewest targets that he's had all year. He normally gets 6 targets per game. That was cut in half when he faced the Chiefs just last time.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with Xavier Worthy, and this one pains me. I mean, to be frank, I think Xavier Worthy as a rookie has had an okay season. I feel like it's always hard to judge Kansas City receivers because I don't think many people were expecting Rashee Rice to have the season that he did last year. People weren't expecting, including myself, Kelsey, to have the disappointment that he's had this year, right? Like you just never know with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, which makes Patrick Mahomes that much of a tremendous quarterback. He doesn't look to the same guys every game. He looks to different guys, different mixes, different schemes, all that stuff. So Xavier Worthy, for the success that he's had, he's only had a career high, obviously, of 4 receptions in a game. That's happened 3 times. He's had a couple of touchdowns, has 4 in the year, but hasn't gotten over 80 yards, or only his highest was 73. So he's kind of been spotty. He had 20.8 in week one, and then he's kind of had a couple, 13, 16. Then he's had some like 2, -1, 9 last week. I just don't trust it. I don't, especially in this matchup here. I think people are kind of giving him a little bit more credit than he deserves, especially for the fact that he's rostered in 81.1% of leagues. I think that's, I wouldn't say way too high, but especially for some of the other guys that are not rostered to nearly that percentage, there's an expectation that Xavier Worthy is going to be an elite level wide receiver. He probably will be throughout his career, but not in this matchup here against Las Vegas. I think, as mentioned, I think I wouldn't be surprised if both tight ends, Kelsey and Gray, are able to get in the end zone. I'm also not expecting this game to necessarily be a high scoring game. Divisional matchups in general are not typically high scoring affairs. So wouldn't be surprised if there's only, 2 touchdowns on the offensive side. Maybe Kareem Hunt runs one in. I think the only way that Xavier Worthy is going to be able to have success is if he gets in the end zone, because the receptions and the yard totals just haven't been there so far this season. And that's part of it, but that's also part of, I guess, Xavier Worthy and kind of going through some of his, I wouldn't say growing pains, but some of his failures or successes that he may achieve in his rookie campaign. Okay, what about a score and game prediction?
Yeah, so I had the Chiefs winning. I do agree it's not going to be super high scoring. I think the game will end 23-10 for the Chiefs.
Okay, for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with the Chiefs winning this game 17-13. Again, low scoring affair. I think the Chiefs do win at home. Wouldn't surprise me if the Raiders win just to kind of shock the world. But I really do think that, the Raiders have a little bit more inconsistencies. No idea who their quarterback is going to be. They just are trying to, I think, at this point, lose to maybe get a guy like Shador Sanders. Or they need a quarterback. So be curious to see who they target in the draft. But I think the Chiefs find a way to get it done. I think it's a low scoring game in Kansas City. And yeah, they win this game 17-13. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode here on The Truth, especially on your busy Black Friday day. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter, The Truth as one, to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp to focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports, AZ, and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity, while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15 for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.